All right, here we go. We're taking a look at the AMA that Blizzard did a couple of days ago. We're a couple of days late. One second. The Nexus, interesting. Right, let's hit play because he's going to keep saying the Nexus interesting. It's going to get real annoying. And then for people watching live after this, like I said, we're going to jump in and we're going to do more of our A to Z playthrough. So be ready to boot up your game clients and hop on to join in if you want to. I actually thought, I haven't actually read through much of this. I saw a couple of the comments and they're really interesting. Basically, the game designers talking about game balance and game design. Oh, it says it in the title, but they seem to have some pretty insightful stuff. So I thought it'd be kind of nice to go through and at least spend, 10, 15 minutes taking a look at these and some of the main points. So we will see. It's actually very hot today. It's actually very sunny. 18 degrees. Is it only 18? It feels like it's hotter than that. Bear in mind, Ireland is normally very cold, so it's very hot for here, relatively speaking. But hello, everyone. Mods, if you make sure that there's no, horrible racist things being said in chat, just common decency in the chat box up there. We're going to try this out. If it doesn't work, then I won't post the video. Mods, you let me know how it goes. All right, so the first question is, some support heroes like Tyrande and Tassadar are not able to heal solo, but we saw changes to prevent double support lineups. What's the plan for these off-support heroes? Then Blizz Cooper replied, he says, we have a few plans regarding Tyrande and Tassadar. So let's go through it, and again, I'll give you my opinion on what the changes are, and yeah, we'll see. In the new role system that we're aiming to release later this year, we have a distinction between healers and supports. The current thinking is that characters like Tyrande and Tassadar will be flagged as support, will be treated differently for quick matchmaking purposes than someone like Stukov or Malfurion who will be healers. I think there's actually some stuff later on, it might even be in this post, which talks about making Tyrande a healer as opposed to a support. Again, healer's supposed to be the main healer, and then supports. Tassadar, I think Medivh is a better example of a support character. Basically, they bring utility, they bring maybe a small bit of healing or shielding to the team. I think Zarya is another example, but they're not the main healer that keeps people topped off or anything like that. So yeah, I think distinguishing between support and healer is good. I think double healer is a bit boring and not the best for the meta. It very much dictates some of the roles, and that was a problem. Not a massive problem, but definitely a big enough problem. I think having supports as distinct from healers is actually pretty good though. And you can have some comps with supports, but not every comp needs a support, whereas basically most comps need a healer. We're okay with compositions that utilize a support hero like Tassadar, Zarya, or Medivh. Oh, there we go. In addition to a I'll read through this all first, then I'll give my thoughts. Actually, that's better, lest we overlap too much. We understand that most, if not all, team comps will likely require a dedicated healer, regardless of whether or not you take a support character like the three I just mentioned. We think that teams with some kind of support healer combination could lead to some fun and interesting strategic and tactical gameplay situations, much like team comps where you take both a dedicated tank and an off-tank or bruiser hero as well. We very much prefer these kinds of team comps to double healer comps, which we already nerfed last year because they were creating unpleasant gameplay experiences for many people. And one thing I will say is that I'm actually very patient with imbalances in the supports as they are now, supports healers as they are now. Because, I mean, they had to change healers quite a lot. So that's why I'm pretty patient about them fixing up healers and supports at the moment, personally. Tyrande's current playstyle and talent builds can be really unique and compelling for certain players, but she doesn't really have a role in the current meta. Internally, we're currently exploring some design changes to Tyrande that would make her viable as a solo healer. Overall, the changes have been received very positively by our team, but there is a trade-off. She's losing a lot of damage and her ability to chunk people from long distances with her owl build. This is something that we recognize can be fun for Tyrande players, so we're carefully debating if this is the right direction for her. I'm curious to hear any thoughts you have on this. Obviously, we could go the opposite route to her for her and remove/reduce her healing mechanic, point her more towards a ranged assassin. Let's actually, this looks like it touches on the same thing, so let's go with this. As I'm sure will be asked in response to what I wrote above, why make Tyrande a healer, not an assassin? We're exploring the healing side of things, as the rest of Tyrande's kit can really encourage a supporty playstyle. She can provide strong scouting for her team using owls. Using them to deal tons of damage works, but it's a bit odd. Her trait debuffs an enemy and helps the rest of your team set up kills. We can make the trait more selfish, but we like its current iteration that sets up your team, essentially calls out a focused target. For her stun, we're cautious to put a hard CC on the base kit of most ranged assassins. We do break this role from time to time, so it's kind of soft for either way. but we feel more comfortable putting strong CC on supports and healers. This allows them to set up your team to do meaningful things outside of pure healing. Okay, looks like we're going to touch on Tassadar then. So to talk about Tyrande, I definitely would prefer to move her more towards healer than range assassin. I think we got loads of range assassins. More healers are always welcome. More range assassins are welcome too, but not as much as more healers, I would say. And she's already in the game, and like they said, I think you've already got, utility from Vision with the Owl. You've got her trait, which buffs that, which, works as a team thing. I think it's much easier and better for the game to move Tyrande into healing than ranged assassinating. And she's very much on the ranged assassin spectrum of things right now. I don't think that her stun is, really that good for range assassin. I don't think that these long range poking owls are something you want to improve more. I just don't feel her kit is very interesting from a ranged assassin perspective. I'm sure you could take the good parts, the things that you like, I don't know, Shadow Stalk as a damage tool, for example. I think that's pretty interesting, but you could easily take that and implement that for a new hero that is fully designed to be a ranged assassin and make a more interesting kit and move Tyrande more into more healing tied in with basic attacking from her. That's fine too. But yeah, boosting up that healing aspect of it. Roberto says prefer to see Tyrande more as an assassin than a support. Her basic ability seem more assassin. Completely disagreeing. I agree. We need more healers. Yeah, I don't particularly see her basic abilities being all that assassiny, like I said. I'd much rather, I've talked about this before as well. I don't like the owl for damage. I think it's just really annoying. I much rather see her owl as utility, vision. Perhaps one idea I had, on this was you could have her owl, you put the owl, let's say, think of an empowered flame strike from Kael'thas. It's about that area. You throw out the owl and it kind of floats there and it does a shrink rate debuff. All enemy heroes in this area do 25% less damage for 3 seconds or something. That's just an idea. I think that'd be kind of cool. Have this healer that heals in a way through debuffing the enemy team's damage. It would be a nice answer to wombo combos. It would also be a nice answer to things like Garrosh or Diablo, these hard engaged displacement heroes. Be ooh, well, okay, at least I can throw out this long range owl, which will hover over this area, and if I place it well, it will neutralize a chunk of that burst damage. And you could probably think up cool talents around that. That's just one idea that I had that might be kind of cool for the hero, and would be, in my opinion, an interesting route to take either her or a different support in the future. That sort of area control debuffy type thing. I think that'd be kind of nice. And, there's ways to play around it, and I feel like it counters things in the meta that we kind of need more counters to. So I'd kind of like that with Tyrande. Personally, I'd like that with her. So that's my thoughts on that. Tassadar is someone we would like to look at more in the future, but he's not someone we're currently working on. In the past, he could be viewed as a really frustrating character to play against. He was often paired with characters like Genji or Illidan, who could essentially hyper-carry with his shields. We think the role of enabler for Tassadar is pretty unique and fun, especially with someone like Avala, who's a little easier to deal with. Not sure what changes will make to Tassadar in the future. Now, Tassadar is very interesting. Tassadar is very interesting. A lot of people don't like Tassadar right now. A lot of people think Tassadar sucks. I haven't looked at it recently, but I remember when I did look at the stats, maybe about a month or so ago, around about the time when I did that Tassadar video, I remember seeing that Tassadar, although he was by far the lowest win rate hero in the game, at all levels of play combined, when you look at, master level play, which is the highest you can filter for. Now, it's pretty broad, but it's the highest you can filter for, so that's what we've got. His win rate's actually pretty good, and he does get played in pro games sometimes. I think the thing with Tassadar is that he is an enabler with pretty narrow timing windows, and a lot of his value comes from utility. Things like vision, the usefulness of wave clear, and things like force wall. And I think those are very valuable at higher levels of play, but they're pretty useless, hence the really low win rate at, the level of play that most people are playing at. And the question is that a problem? And actually, personally, I'd say no. I think it's actually fine that we have some heroes like Tassadar who are only really valuable at high levels of play, but are pretty weak at lower levels. I personally don't see that as a big design problem. We've got the vice versa thing. We've got heroes that are really good at lower levels of play, but are useless at high levels of play. Gazlo's a great example, where he typically has very, very high win rates and lower levels. Even sometimes in Hero League at higher levels too, he's got good win rates, but he never gets played in pro matches. Again, I don't think that's necessarily a big problem. I think, you're gonna have just the way the game, you know, it's just the nature of the game with so many heroes. You're going to have some that are particularly suited to particular levels of play, and I don't see that as being a massive problem. I think Medivh is something similar. I think Medivh is super interesting and cool. He's not that useful at low levels, but he's very powerful at pro levels in particular. He's like banned often, whereas you never ban him in like a gold game, for example. And personally, I think that's fine. I don't see a major issue with that. I could understand some people might. But yeah, one thing they could do with Tassadar, they could normalize him a little bit, as in remove some of that utility that pro players will use a lot, and then boost up like base stats and things like that, which are going to have an impact across all levels of play. So kind of normalize his range of like, okay, he's not quite as useless at low levels, and not quite as, you know, he's stronger in a different way at top levels, that sort of thing. I think that would be fine. But I kind of like the rough design of the character. I actually think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty good. I mean, I know some people take issue with how the theme fits with the idea of a High Templar. I'm not an expert on that at all. I can understand that perhaps it doesn't match up with that, and that might be an issue. But I think just the general hero design. Peaches in stream, thank you so much. Can we get some nub sub clubs in the chat for Peaches in stream? I think the rough design is actually fine. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Loads of discussion up there. You guys can find this on the Reddit. Just type in AMA. It'll be the top result if you want to see all the comments that other people are leaving here as well. What alternatives for self-sustain were examined for Ana? Were grenade-centric ideas considered? If so, why were they rejected? Chaos OS. He does the Math of the Storm blog. Really good. If you're into that sort of more technical stuff and mathsy stuff, highly recommend his blog. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, definitely check that one out. Thanks for the question, Chaos OS. We explored a few alternatives for self-sustain for Ana. We thought about grenade-centric ideas, however, we shied away from it for a couple of reasons. So this is kind of interesting in terms of hero design, right? Ana's grenade already does a whole lot of stuff. We really didn't want to add more mechanics to it. It already deals damage, heals, negates enemy healing, and gives an Ana-specific healing buff. We didn't want to tack on even more functionality to this. Number 2, we didn't want to add more use cases for her grenade if we can help it. She already wants to use it to secure... This is kind of the same point, isn't it? She already wants to use it to secure kills on enemies when they're put under pressure, as well as to save allies with her healing buff. If we added the third use case of using it on herself as her primary method of self-healing, then there's a high chance that players wouldn't have it for the other use cases when they needed it. There's an argument that this adds mastery to the hero to know how and when to use the ability. I think there's also a high chance that, since it's a high cooldown ability, players will often just end up frustrated when they use it for one of the above use cases, and the situation or the fight changes drastically. They have a large missed opportunity to use it for the other. Yeah, I actually think that's a really good point when they put it like that. I do like that when they actually point it out. There's so many ways to use the grenade that adding even more is maybe not the best idea, adding so much complication to one basic ability. So I actually think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, the idea I had for Ana was probably a pretty bad one too, was that you'd have like a 30-second cooldown, like number 1 button, you know, like an extra button, or you could press her trade or something like that, and it would give her a big boost of healing, but put her Q on like maybe a 5 or 6 second cooldown, something like that. So it's a long cooldown ability. You can't use it all that often. And the idea is, like, instead of shooting your rifle a bunch, it's like you just take all the ammo and jab it in yourself. You're like, heal me! So you give up the ability to heal other players for the sake of healing yourself. Probably a pretty bad idea. I actually think Shrike, working the way it does now, is fine. And if they tune it up, it'll be okay, where she heals off doing damage to stuff. I think it's okay. I also think the buffs to Ana and the nerfs to other supports are actually, they're getting to a point where the supports are getting a lot more balanced. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. A simple way to fix Ana, remove her from the game. Roberta, we just disagree on everything, Roberta. What is this? You're like evil Nubkeks. You're dark Nubkeks today. I actually think Ana is great. She's one of my favorite supports in the game. I mean, she's struggled recently for not being very strong, but I think her design is really cool. I think the hero is awesome and really fun. Lurhan says, let's just skip over here. What's your philosophy regarding some small buffs to weak heroes more frequently, and why is it not happening too often? Interesting. Good morning, Lurhan. Thank you for your question. It's been a hot topic. Very sure. Very true. Very true. You saw a bit of our reaction with the last balance patch. We touched 18 heroes. A multitude of reasons that the amount of changes fluctuates each patch. Here are a couple. Stability. With the exception of a couple of outliers, the current state of the game is actually pretty evenly balanced. All but a handful of heroes are sitting between 45 to 55% win rate. 70% of the roster is actually between 48 to 52%. If we inject too many changes at once, we'll have a hard time narrowing down the cause or effect of any particular change. This can become problematic as every change has a ripple effect. We don't want to upset the equilibrium too much at any given time. Now, one thing I would say about win rate numbers, again, as a general thing, and this is, again, something that you could work out as well from what I just said earlier, but general win rate numbers, in my opinion, are not actually super valuable. So if you say, for example, okay, well, when we take all of the data across all of the leagues, this hero's at a 50% win rate across all levels of play, they're then a perfectly balanced hero? Well, probably not, actually. That doesn't mean that at all. Because I think that heroes have to be balanced across all levels of play, and there's a massive difference between, let's say, bronze and silver versus, master GM versus pro play, and then, gold, platinum, diamond, everything in between. There's all these different levels of play, and having a hero be balanced at each level of play at the same time is a really difficult thing to do, or at least not drastically imbalanced at those levels of play. I think it's a very difficult thing to pull that off, and it can be very deceptive when you say, well, most of the rosters between these, well, you could easily have a hero that, they're extremely dominant at, platinum, diamond, master, but anything below that, they're rubbish, for example, and that could pull the overall figure completely out of whack, when actually that hero needs a lot of changes. Or equally, a hero could be amazing at lower level play, but be useless at high level play. So I think, you want to consider the win rates at each particular tier, and it's a nightmare of balance. That's really tough for Blizzard. And also, they're changing quick match, which I've said before is a really good idea, because not only at the moment do they have to balance it for pro play, for Hero League, basically like semi-organized play, organized play, pro, semi-organized, Hero League, Team League, but also quick match, where it's like anything goes. You can have any heroes against any heroes. 5 assassins versus 5 assassins. Whatever, anything goes. They also have to be balanced for that, because it's the most popular game mode. So what a nightmare to balance. How can you even do that? No wonder it's often a disaster. So luckily they're changing quick match so that it will always be, tanks and healers. So at least that simplifies it a little bit and makes it a bit easier to actually balance these heroes. Like, oh, well, we've got to balance Genji. But what if Genji is mostly countered by tanks or supports? And what if there's no tanks or supports in this game? Oh dear, what a disaster. Yeah, so anyway, my thoughts on that. But win rate is more complicated than it seems. Perception versus reality. This one is what keeps us live and balanced designers up at night. Let's say I come read Reddit, see 10 threads on the front page about the frustration surrounding Hanzo, how overpowered he is. I immediately run to our data dashboard, see his win rate sitting at 46%. This is what it was before the last round of nerfs. I'll come back to I have stuff to say about Hanzo. What is the correct course of action? Technically, he needs buffs, right? This is where balancing on win rate alone becomes impossible. The frustration of playing against Hanzo has surpassed the reality that he is winning a lot less than he should. To fix the issue, we need to make design changes alongside number tweaks, which takes a lot more consideration and testing. In this example, we opted to send out more nerfs in order to relieve frustrations, or internally looking at design changes to fix the core problem. Once we're happy with that, we can release it alongside some buffs in order to stabilize the hero. In a perfect world, we want each hero in the Nexus to feel powerful and rewarding to play, but just as importantly, to feel fair to play against. Now, in terms of Hanzo in particular, I think this is, again, a great example where Hanzo has played lots at higher levels and lots in pro play, but Hanzo is very much based around skill shots. Also, part of what makes him so OP at higher levels is, like, I've talked about this loads before as well. Like on Cursed Hollow, for example, his ability to rush down bosses with his W build was so completely broken. Same on Battlefield of Eternity. They're the two standout examples from the current map rotation. It's so broken that it completely destabilizes the meta on those maps. But that doesn't get exploited to its maximum unless you're at those higher levels of play. So, and also he's so skill shot based. When you look at lower levels of play, people miss enough skill shots that the hero isn't actually that strong. Also, I'd say from my master level experience this season and a few GM level games as well, that's also a thing with Hanzo. I saw plenty of Hanzos that were dominant. Also saw probably a much larger proportion of Hanzos that were mediocre/poor at the hero that ended up giving their team a large disadvantage because they simply missed skill shots. Like, saw lots of 30 to 40% win rate Hanzo players spamming Hanzo and losing most of their games because they just simply didn't have the accuracy. So I think that's a big part of Hanzo's design, is he's so skill based, and his meta breaking stuff is really meta breaking only at the higher levels, at the meta that's at higher levels of play. That's the issue with that hero. I think they needed to buff that, nerf that W build a bit more. I think it's still OP actually at higher levels of play, but now Hanzo I think is going to be very, very weak at lower levels. I think this is maybe a decent response, though, I actually think it's pretty good. You say, okay, people hate this hero. They think he's really annoying to play against. I mean, Li Ming, Genji, there are other great examples. Tracer, though I think they were a bit generally stronger. But nerfing like these heroes people hate, and just be like, okay, they're really shit, like they're really underpowered now, but we'll just get rid of them by nerfs, and then we'll redesign them a little bit. I actually think that's a fine approach. I think it's actually a pretty good approach, actually. I mean, it kind of sucks for people who main that hero, sure, but it might be healthier long-term for the game. Yeah. Yeah, a stay hydrated bot is back, guys. Yep. Yep. So yeah, that's what I kind of think about there. I think Hanzo's a really good example. I know I talked about this in a previous video, and people were saying, I don't think Hanzo is skill-based. Hanzo's very definitely skill-based. Like, his Q is a skill shot, his W is a skill shot, his ult is a skill shot, and, you know, they're very variable. Getting maximum value out of them is pretty difficult. Also, maximizing his trait for aggression. Yeah, I think there's tons of skill that goes into Hanzo. So there's quite a large gap in terms of his typical performance, his top level performance, and then his lowest level performance. There's a very, very wide range there. And I think that is perhaps an issue with the hero. Though, like I said, with Tassadar, not necessarily a massive issue, just something that has to be... I mean, you can have gaps, but they can't be too large. Let's put it like that. Razor Edges. We have a handful of heroes that walk on a razor's edge of balance. Each member of the Live and Balance team has been working on the game since before it was launched. That's interesting. Is that a good thing? I don't know. We've seen a lot of situations where a very small number buff can turn a borderline hero into a nightmare. Look at crowd favorite Chen. Yeah, I also remember this happened to Kerrigan. Do you guys remember that? There's this one patch where they buffed Kerrigan's like HP and damage, I think, just overall by about 10% each, and she went from being a pretty weak hero to being literally the most overpowered and overbearing hero in the game. Like, she was so broken, it was ridiculous. Yeah. But Chen, there was a time when Chen was completely unbearable to play against, teehee. In certain compositions, he still is. His design is very binary, that you can either deal with him and his trait or you can't. This is something we can't really fix through tuning. Need to go into much deeper design changes to fix. We have a handful of these types of heroes. They're very much on our radar. I also agree with this. There's some heroes that are better being, you know, very niche or slightly underpowered because they're very annoying. I think this is the thing with a lot of specialists, actually. Like Sergeant Hammer, for example. Probably better that hero remains relatively underpowered, very easily counterable. All the problems with Hammer, because if Hammer's too strong, very, very annoying to play against, I would say. I mean, I'm sure you can think of plenty of examples of heroes that, if they're too strong, get very annoying very quickly. I think Zarya is actually a great example as well, that they've done a pretty decent job of balancing down, actually. But yeah, she could potentially, with, you know, slight number tweaks, become really obnoxious. So that's always really interesting to consider, for sure. Okay, let's read one or two more things, and then we'll call an end to this thing here. Oh yeah, Alarak's another good example. Yeah, Yeah. When you find an awesome Alarak, it's frustrating to play against him. Yeah. I think Alarak's okay because he does have quite a bit of counterplay, stuff like that. I think that's what's important. I think, yeah, I would say more so the issue with Razor Edges, maybe not Alarak actually is a great example, but heroes that have relatively little counterplay to them, you know, that can be very difficult to counter. If you make them too strong, it's a problem. I think Alarak, maybe not so bad. Yeah, it's an interesting one, chat. It's an interesting. Her resident Alarak players, yeah. Can you supply us with any details about the new roles, specifically the tags that we use in the new system, how they complement each other? Here we go. This is very interesting for guys too. So there are going to be both systems in the game. So first of all, roles. 6 different roles: tanks, bruisers, melee assassins, ranged assassins, supports, and healers. This gives us enough bandwidth to classify the vast majority of our heroes. That said, in heroes, we have several characters who bring something unique to the genre, and as a result, they don't easily fit within these conventions. Lost Vikings is a good example. We need to make some concessions in those cases. I think that's fine. Yeah, I think, again, like they said, most heroes fit in. Lost Vikings, they mentioned putting them as support before, and I think that's fine as well. The role doesn't fit particularly well, but this is more accurate and more insightful than the current role system, and it's helpful, and I think that's good. And then adding tags on, I think, is actually a great idea too. personally been working on the tag system. Although it's still very much a work in progress, we can share a few things. We want the system to be easy to understand, but also robust enough to give quality details about how each hero plays. We currently have about 15 major tags, things like wave clear, burst damage, crowd control, that can be attached to a hero. These should help players understand the focus of each hero, while also allowing them to find similar heroes in their comfort zone or specific qualities they might need in a given draft or match. I think this is really good, right? So I think general role system as a general overview is really good. Obviously, like when you're more experienced and you're better at the game, you don't particularly care about the roles. You just, you care about how the heroes actually play. So I like once you're better, I think that, you naturally think in terms of tags anyway. Or even more than tags. Like when you're really good, you start thinking about how a hero fits in your particular draft in combination with the other heroes on your team, against the combination of the other heroes in the enemy team, in combination with how the map plays as well. So there's a lot of complication. I mean, you can't make that all clear through the game. That comes with experience and understanding. But I think this is pretty good. So yeah, general role system as like an introduction thing. Okay, broadly speaking, these are how the heroes play in the meta. Tags, this is how they particularly play in a bit more individual detail. And then there's another level on top of that, skill, which is understanding how all these combinations, however many hundreds of thousands or millions of combinations of heroes and maps there are in the game, how those particular things actually work together at particular times in particular matches. So I think that's fine. I know, for example, when I talked about this role system in the previous video, people really wanted a pusher role, a hero that pushes. And again, in terms of how the game's played, there's, not really a pusher role. It's something that some heroes do, but it's a lot more situational. I think having pusher, someone who pushes lanes as a tag is much more insightful and useful than that. Sorry, Contagion. We're going to jump into some games pretty soon. Asmodan. Oh, yeah, so a few tidbits about Asmodan. He's going to have an update with Taste for Blood becoming baseline. His level 1 talents are going to alter the baseline quest. Summon Demon Warriors getting a baseline damage aura. And All Shall Burn, which is his channel laser, won't last indefinitely, but does more DPS over a shorter period. I love Asmodan, but I'm totally cool with them changing him a little bit. His talents are a disaster, and I actually think the hero is quite strong in Hero League on particular maps. You guys who watch my stream will see me play him quite a bit. He's super fun, stress-free hero. But I think, I'm going to miss my Asmodan, but if they change that, I think it's pretty reasonable. Anything else here? Nothing too interesting there. Making early game more meaningful. Okay, that's kind of cool too. Any plans to buff Rexar? He's a very high win rate. He's a low play. Yeah, so he's very niche. I think this is fine. He isn't played because he doesn't feel powerful. I don't particularly see an issue with Rexar right now. I think Rexar is relatively decent in terms of game design. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think this is most of the main stuff here. Is the dev team happy with Valera? Valera is actually a great example of a hero that can be really annoying if she's too strong. Room for improvement. Yeah. Okay, I think that's enough. Oh, can you share any details about the planned Rainer rework? This is for you, chat. Someone was asking. I gave him a trait. Winky face. Wow, super exciting. Upgrade Hans level 16. Found Texas cigar. All right, great. There you go. There's some of the main points from that. I think it's a pretty interesting discussion. And I like a lot of the stuff that's going on here. And a final point, I think it's really good to see these AMAs. I think it's a great insight. I think it's a great level of communication. So again, another thumbs up for Blizz. I love when you guys do this and doing it more and more. It's fantastic in my opinion. I know it's a lot of work for them to do this, but I think it's a really good thing to do. And hopefully they get some good feedback from it. Yeah, we'll see. There we go. Cool.